Good evening, I'm Chef Koinange, and this is Chef Koinange Live. Tonight, Politics 101. When the best tag team on television shows up, you know that's what the topic is. Thank goodness PLO is back from across the way. He's been helping the Tanzanians with their constitution. We're lucky to have him back, and I suggest you grab a pen and paper, thesaurus, dictionary, Wikipedia. The man is on fire. Right next to him, oh yeah, publisher, journalist, analyst, you name it. And recently, spokesman for the Council of Governors. Good grief. How does that happen? Barack Muluka, PLO Lumumba. Gentlemen, Dr. Good to see you both.
Good to see you too.
It's been hectic the last couple of weeks. I mean, goodness, this country, PLO, and we talk about this all the time. Sometimes we are an ungrateful nation, and the reason I'm saying this is, let's take, for instance, Migori as an example. President shows up in Migori. He comes in with a whole bunch of goodies. 7 billion shillings worth, cane farmers being paid. He's there, he's malaria nets and everything. And what thanks does he get? They throw shoes at him. PLO, help me out here.
You know, Jeff, despite the protestations of certain elements within the political class, the events in Migori were primitively choreographed. And it's a sad thing that happened, is a demonstration that we talk about democracy, but we don't understand democracy. And President Kenyatta must be praised. He remained calm at all times, because he or she who throws a shoe at a stone, if he had a grenade and an AK-47, he or she would use it. And my appeal to his government and to himself as a person is that he should not be deterred. Those are elements who should be isolated, and you don't blame the puppet, you blame the puppeteers. And we know who the puppeteers are. They're individuals who think that they have captured the minds of the community and that they can use them for their personal short-term political interest. And that must be condemned as primitivity in its most primitive sense.
Absolutely. Barack, do you agree? Was it a shameful event?
I think it is worse than shameful. It's actually the height of scandal. That political intolerance should never be carried to those kinds of levels. That we have had people who have told us that when a dog is misbehaving and barking at people aimlessly and unnecessarily, you don't speak to the dog. You look for the owner of the dog. And if this is a case where the dogs were getting out of hand and doing things that they were not supposed to be doing, we must ask ourselves for whom these dogs were barking and what their objective is supposed to have been. And yet there's a sense in which I think we all stand accused, because on the eve of this trip to Nyanza by His Excellency the President, you read the headlines. Was the media pepping up this whole thing? They were talking about the President making an assault into somebody's terrain,
and backyard.
And backyard. And they were sort of casting it as if the theater is being set for confrontation. And we must ask ourselves about this kind of political intolerance, because it boils down to something called political intolerance. It's intolerance that says, this is my terrain, as Professor here correctly says, that don't come here. It's an intolerance that says, if you are not supporting this view and you are not wearing our colors, move away from here and go to the place which you are speaking for. It is intolerance that says that if you are supporting a certain kind of cause which we are opposed to, quit your position in the political arrangement. So we are all kind of caught up in this whirlpool.
Doc, I think Barack mentioned something. I didn't think of it, but you know, he may have a point there. We have a responsibility, and we keep saying that to ourselves as journalists. And when you look back at the newspaper headlines before, the TV headlines before, they were talking about President going to the opposition's heartland, the opposition's backyard. And maybe we should be more sensitive. Maybe we shouldn't, we shouldn't sensationalize things.
I can't agree with Barack more, Jeff, because the media in this country consistently primes up politicians in a particular way. And I like what the former president of Sierra Leone once said, that a journalist with a pen in his hand is like a soldier with an AK-47. He can use it to defend or he can use it to offend. The journalists in this country love it when we are in a state of conflict. And I think that is irresponsibility. Our societies, whether we like it or not, are fundamentally pre-industrial societies. And for that reason, when you cast the country in tribal terms, you divide the country, essentially balkanize the country, and you say that this is somebody's territory. Number one, you are saying that the people in that territory don't think, somebody thinks for them. The second thing you are saying when it involves the president is that the president is not the president of the republic. The president is effectively in your own choreographed drama visiting another country where he must be granted permission, and if permission is not granted, then he sees what those fellows have cooked for him, including the throwing of shoes. The journalists in this country must style up and remember that they have a duty. As Hilary Ngweno once said, a third world journalist has a responsibility which his bigger brother, as he said, or cousin in Europe no longer has because of political maturity.
Good point, good point. Barack, put on your Council of Governors spokesman hat for a moment, because the excuse that was coming out was Governor Okoth Obado. He was the cause. Everyone was saying it was him they were directing their anger at. It wasn't the president. Is that just an excuse?
Look, if anybody has got issues with Governor Okoth Obado, I don't even need to put on my governor's spokesperson's cap, because this is commonsensical. You go to any home where the parent is holding a stick, they are about to chastise the child. The moment you arrive, they tell the child, you are very lucky. Your uncle has arrived just in the nick of time.
Saved by the bell.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So you don't go washing your dirty linen before people because you think that you have issues with this person. That when you have visitors, you comport yourself with some level of decorum and dignity. That eventually it is not Okoth Obado whom they have brought to shame. It is themselves. And somebody is basically telling you that if you want to come to this terrain, you must have your passport bearing my stamp.
PLO, you mentioned something really important there. You said president's behavior was very admirable, very mature, because he turned around, addressed the audience, kept saying, Nitarudi, na nitarudi, na nitarudi.
And my counsel to the president, go to Nyanza this time in Kisumu. Set camp at the State House in Kisumu and visit Siaya, visit Homa Bay, visit Migori. You are elected. Once you are elected as the President of the Republic of Kenya, you don't need anybody's permission. You serve everybody. And I think that his words were quite instructive. I'm the President of the Republic of Kenya, including those who voted for me and those who did not vote for me. The votes of the losing candidate become irrelevant once a president is sworn in. That is the tradition in all democracies. And I think that that is the direction that he must follow. And Barack has rightly said, it is incumbent upon politicians across the political divide to realize and recognize that the long-term health of this country requires that we respect the institution of the presidency. You may not like Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, but whether you like it or not, for the time being, he is the President of the Republic of Kenya. And why do I commend him? Let me tell you, in many parts of Africa, in many parts of the world, they would have shot everybody there down.
Yeah.
Because the life of the president and therefore the security of the state was under threat. And it would have been a story that would have...
It would still be reverberating.
Correct.
Yes.
Across the world.
Absolutely.
And Kenya would have been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
Again. Yeah. Good point. Speaking of Commander-in-Chief, we're going to put up a photograph, and I'm sure you've both seen it, the whole country has seen it. The president in military attire, 5 stars on his cap, U Kenyatta on his chest,
yes.
C in C. What do you think, Barack? Your thoughts?
I'm still trying to interpret it as things continue to unfold.
Is it early days?
That is not something that you see that so often. I'm reminded that former President Mwai Kibaki never got to put on a military regalia.
Yeah, but would you see Kibaki in military regalia?
Of course, he was the commander-in-chief. Okay. And it was actually under his dispensation that our troops went into Somalia.
Yes.
That is indeed the first international engagement, so to speak, when we have seen the Kenyan Defense Forces crossing the border into another country, and where they still are. So I would see him very well in military regalia. Jomo Kenyatta was in the habit of putting on, but ceremonial. But these are the military fatigues. So I'm still trying to understand and interpret this particular happening, even as other social events continue to unfold. In the fullness of time, I will be able to give
a very conservative answer there.
I'm much more clearer in my own view. I think President Kenyatta, for those who are looking at aesthetics, he looked pretty good in it. I hope he can dismantle an AK-47. But I thought it was very appropriate on the occasion of the launch of the East African Brigade, if only to reinforce the fact that we are men and women of peace, but we hold the position of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Kenya, or the Defense Forces of Kenya, and that we are going to lead by example, and that we are simply stating that we are capable of being the users of tough love if it becomes necessary. I think he sent a good message. He's young and he has the energy. It's good.
PLO's trying to say he looked good. The ladies loved it. The ladies loved it.
The ladies loved the men in uniform.
I think that even men must have liked, thought about the possibility that they could look like that. Unfortunately, we are quite indisciplined, and we have packed up a lot of excess in the right places.
In the wrong places.
In the wrong places. I thought it was in the right places, and therefore we cannot quite look like that.
Gentlemen, speaking of men in uniform, men and women in uniform, the revival or the rejuvenation of the National Youth Service, something has to be said about that, Barack. This is more than just a little statement here.
Oh yes, I think that is something wonderful, something that we had forgotten, that there were very many young people who left even primary school, who left high school, and they got their way into the National Youth Service. They were able to be taught lots of practical skills, trades, and which they put to good use for their benefit, for the benefit of the nation. That this is something to be commended, and talking about which you have seen that even the Juakali sector is once again starting to enjoy the kind of prominence that it did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And let's face it, if this country is going to have to move ahead, to industrialize, and to become the kind of society that we expect, we must start recognizing those noble and seemingly very small initiatives, because they form the bedrock of industrialization. Go anywhere in the world, that is where it started.
Absolutely. PLO, somebody's thinking out there, because the youth, we always talk about the youth. 2/3 of the population is the youth. NYS was all but dead. Now you look at it, I mean, look at everything. They training, hands-on, computers. You name it, they'll be involved in just about anything.
You know, a society that does not pay regard to its youth is a society adrift. And I have no doubt in my mind that what we saw yesterday, and I must commend my good friend Nelson Githinji and those who work under him, that going forward, if we are to give meaning to patriotism, that is one of the ways. In fact, I hold the view that all young Kenyans must be required to participate in the National Youth Service Scheme. And we must ensure that young men and women from Meru spend their stint in Kuria, and those in Kuria, in Kwale, and those in Taita Taveta, in Uasin Gishu. It is in that way that we are going to begin to create the Kenya nation. And let's talk about things that Barack has already talked about. What about mechanics? What about plumbers? What about the artisans? In my view, this is a good thing, which I think is beginning to happen, and I think that we must commend the men and women who have been involved in this process of revival, and they must be given the prominence that they deserve. I looked at the newspapers today, and I looked at the television footage yesterday, and I say we are beginning to recreate and to rebuild a nation that is worthy of being commended. And I hope that in the next 15 years, we'll see a new generation of Kenyans who think Kenyan.
Absolutely.
Good thing.
Kenya first.
Yes,
and let's face it, I looked at the ads for NYS. They have this promotional video. It looks sexy, man. It looked good. I mean, you're almost proud. It's like a Marine recruitment video, some Western produced outfit.
The sex of it, I do not know, but he's macho.
Macho, sex, the bottom line.
Yes. Exactly. PLO's being philosophical. No, but that shows there's something that's happening out there that, people can make a lot of noise on the side that they want. But Barack, let's face it, people are working.
Yeah, the tragedy is that I go back to the media, and I think that I've got every right to speak about the media, because I'm myself an insider and a trainer of journalists for that matter. But even as I talk about the media, I must also talk about the society itself, because we say in the media that we give you what you want. That if you were to switch on your TV and it is prime news time, and you are not seeing these confrontations that form the staple of our diet every evening before we go to bed, you are likely to say that today there is no news. Okay? So there are lots of good things that are happening in this country, developmental things that edify us and give us hope for the future. Why aren't we focusing on these things and saying this is happening? If you were to look at health, for example, we should interrogate what has been happening in the counties, what has been happening at the national level. But you hear about health when somebody dies, when somebody is accosted and beleaguered, then we hear about health. You hear about roads when there's a bad road somewhere and people have died on that road. You hear about lots of things when something bad has happened. Is it possible that we could do a balancing act and have a bit of paradigm shift so that what is good coming out of us can also see the light of day?
And PLO, we are to blame for that, aren't we? Let's face it, we're to blame.
We are the co-authors of our misfortune. As a people, as a society, we thrive in an environment where negativity is given its pride of place. And I can't agree with Barack Muluka more that in a society where people claim that they have faith in the media must play a positive role. And there are things to be told. Look at our headlines. A friend of mine told me when you drive into Kenya, you are a foreigner, you look at the headlines, you think that the country is going to an election the following day, or the country is on the verge of a civil war. We can begin to report the things that deserve to be reported, but give prominence to the things, as he says, that edify us, that give us hope, that give premium and place premium on the development of the nation. And there is a sense in which that can be done, must be done, and ought to be done, and should be done if this country is to realize our potential and to occupy a rightful position amongst the Committee of Nations.
Indeed, and the time is now. Gentlemen, I want to take a break, come back, talk about the big R, the referendum. Is it going to happen? Are we wasting time and money? Think about that, gentlemen. Also, coming up this weekend, first anniversary of Westgate. It's been a year already, gentlemen. Have we learned any lessons from that? Yes, we have a new NIS director. What does that mean? Let's talk about that. And also, I know it happened more than a month ago, the president's trip to the U.S. bending over backwards to come into Kenya. Is it because of the Chinese? Have the Chinese woken up the Americans? Let's think about that, gentlemen, and take a break. Dr. PLO Lumumba, who sees no sexiness in the NYS.
This is macho.
Machismo.
Machismo. And of course, Muluka Barack, the 2 R's. The best tag team on television, talking like they see it, without fear or favor. It is Politics 101, talking about everything and anything that's been happening around the country in the last few weeks and months.